Every January, millions of people make the same promise. This is my year. This is the year they'll finally get in shape, save more money, read more books, wake up earlier, start the business they've been talking about for years. For a little while, it feels different. The alarm goes off and they get out of bed. The running shoes finally leave the closet. Healthy meals replace the takeout. Everything seems to be moving in the right direction. Then something changes. A late night becomes a missed workout. One skipped workout becomes an entire week. One cheat meal becomes ordering takeout every night. The book they planned to finish gathers dust on the shelf. A month later, life looks almost exactly the way it did before. And the hardest part isn't failing, it's wondering why this keeps happening. Why is change so difficult? Why does motivation disappear just when you need it most? Why do some people seem capable of staying disciplined while everyone else keeps starting over? Most people think they know the answer. They assume they aren't motivated enough, that they lack discipline, that they simply don't have what successful people have. But according to Atomic Habits by James Clear, almost everything we've been taught about change is backwards. The people who consistently improve aren't stronger. They aren't more motivated. And they certainly don't wake up every morning feeling inspired. They simply understand something the rest of us don't. Real transformation rarely begins with one massive decision. It begins with something so small that most people never notice it. Imagine two friends. They're the same age. They earn about the same income, live in similar apartments, and follow almost identical routines. Fast forward 1 year. One of them is healthier, more confident, has read 12 books, saved thousands of dollars, and finally launched the side business they've dreamed about for years. The other? They're almost exactly where they started. Nothing terrible happened, nothing dramatic. Life simply continued. So what made the difference? Most people imagine that successful people make huge life-changing decisions, but that's almost never how real change happens. Success usually arrives quietly, hidden inside hundreds of decisions so small they seem insignificant. Choosing water instead of soda, reading 10 pages before bed, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, saving $20 instead of spending it, going to sleep 30 minutes earlier. Each choice feels too small to matter, too easy to skip, too easy to postpone, and that's exactly why they're so powerful. Now imagine planting a seed. The next morning, nothing. A week later, still nothing. Even after several weeks, the ground looks exactly the same. If you judged your progress only by what you could see, you'd probably assume nothing was happening. But beneath the surface, the roots are spreading, growing stronger every single day, preparing for something that hasn't become visible yet. Habits work the same way. The biggest mistake people make is expecting visible results from invisible work. We think every workout should transform our body. Every study session should make us smarter. Every healthy meal should change the number on the scale. When those changes don't happen immediately, we convince ourselves that the effort isn't working, so we stop. Not because the habit failed, but because we expected results long before they were ready to appear. There's another reason change feels so difficult. Our brains are built to chase immediate rewards. Imagine it's the end of a long day. You have two choices. Spend an hour exercising, or spend an hour watching your favorite show. One choice feels uncomfortable now but rewards you later. The other feels rewarding now but costs you later. Without realizing it, your brain naturally pulls you toward the immediate reward. That's why ordering fast food feels easier than cooking. Scrolling social media feels easier than reading. Sleeping in feels easier than waking up early. The rewards are instant. The consequences are delayed. Good habits work in the opposite direction. They ask you to invest effort today for rewards you won't experience until weeks, months, or even years later. And that's a difficult trade for the human brain, not because we're lazy, but because we're wired for survival. For thousands of years, immediate rewards helped humans stay alive. Food, safety, shelter. Our brains haven't changed. Only our environment has. Think about compound interest. If you invest a small amount of money consistently, Nothing exciting seems to happen at first, for months, maybe even years. The growth feels almost invisible, but eventually, something remarkable happens. Your money begins earning money. Growth accelerates. You start paying attention to something much more important, your direction. Because if tiny habits have the power to completely change your future, then there's one question we still haven't answered. If small habits are so powerful, why do so many people give up before they ever see the results? Imagine you're standing at the edge of a frozen lake. The surface is solid. Nothing moves. Nothing changes. Now imagine the temperature slowly begins to rise, from -15 degrees to -10, still nothing, -5, nothing, -1. What once looked insignificant suddenly becomes impossible to ignore. Habits follow the exact same principle. Every action is like making a tiny deposit into your future self. One workout won't transform your body. One page won't make you an expert. One healthy meal won't change your health. But they were never supposed to. Their purpose isn't to change your life today. Their purpose is to influence the person you'll become tomorrow. That's why James Clear calls them atomic habits. Not because they're powerful on their own, but because, like atoms, they're incredibly small, and yet everything around us is built from them. This leads to one of the most important questions in the entire book. Most people wake up asking, "What do I need to accomplish today?" It's not a bad question, but there's a better one. Who am I becoming because of what I repeatedly do? Because every action you take is casting a vote for the type of person you're becoming. Every workout is a vote for becoming someone who values health. Every page you read is a vote for becoming a learner. Every promise you keep to yourself is a vote for becoming someone who is disciplined. One vote won't decide the outcome, but thousands of votes eventually will, and once you understand that, you stop obsessing over quick results. Still frozen. If you were watching from the outside, you'd probably think the heat wasn't doing anything. Then the temperature reaches 0. Almost instantly, cracks begin to spread across the surface. Moments later, the ice starts to melt. Most people believe the transformation happened at that final degree, but it didn't. Every degree before it mattered just as much. The change had been building the entire time. It simply wasn't visible yet. Progress in life works the same way. We expect improvement to look like a straight line. Work harder, get better, work harder again, see even bigger results. But real progress almost never follows that pattern. Instead, it stays hidden for far longer than we expect. This is what James Clear calls the plateau of latent potential. It's the place where effort is happening, but results haven't caught up yet, and unfortunately, it's also where most people quit. Think about someone trying to lose weight. They wake up early every morning, prepare healthier meals, go to the gym 4 times a week. Week 1, almost nothing changes. Week 2, the mirror looks the same. Week 3, the scale barely moves. A thought quietly creeps in. Maybe this just isn't working. So they stop, not realizing their body has been changing in ways they couldn't see. Their muscles are becoming stronger, their heart is becoming healthier, their metabolism is adapting, the visible results were coming, just not as quickly as they expected. The tragedy is that many people quit only days before the breakthrough. This doesn't only happen with fitness. Think about learning a new language. At first, every sentence feels impossible. You struggle to remember basic words. You forget what you learned yesterday. It feels like you're making no progress at all. Then one day, without even realizing when it happened, you understand an entire conversation, not because of one perfect study session, but because hundreds of ordinary ones quietly accumulated over time. The same is true for saving money, building confidence, learning an instrument, growing a business, writing a book. The biggest breakthroughs almost always arrive after long periods where nothing seems to be happening. This creates a dangerous illusion. We start believing that our actions aren't making a difference. So instead of staying consistent, we look for something new, a different workout, a different productivity system, a different diet, a different morning routine. We're constantly digging new wells instead of making the existing one deep enough to reach water. James Clear argues that success isn't about constantly finding better strategies. It's about sticking with one strategy long enough for it to work. There's another mistake that quietly keeps people stuck. We become obsessed with goals. I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to make 6 figures. I want to write a book. Goals aren't bad. In fact, they give us direction. But they also create a hidden problem. Imagine 2 runners preparing for a marathon. One wins, one finishes last. They had the same goal, to complete the race. If goals alone created success, both should have achieved the same result. Clearly something else mattered. The goal didn't determine the outcome. The preparation did. The daily training, the nutrition, the sleep, the countless habits repeated long before race day. Goals decide where you want to go. Systems decide whether you ever get there. Think about your favourite sports team. Every season begins with the same goal. Win the championship. Only one team succeeds. The difference isn't ambition. It's the systems behind that ambition. The quality of practice, the coaching, the preparation, the daily standards. The same principle applies to every part of life. Everyone wants good health. Few build healthy systems. Everyone wants financial freedom. Few build financial habits. Everyone wants confidence. Few consistently do the uncomfortable things that create confidence. The outcome always reflects the system behind it. James Clear puts it simply. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Think about that for a moment. If you want to become healthier, your system matters more than your motivation. If you want to become wealthier, your system matters more than your dreams. If you want to become more productive, your system matters more than buying another planner. Because motivation comes and goes. Systems remain. They carry you on the days when motivation disappears, and eventually, they become something even more powerful. Not just something you do, but someone you are. And that's where the biggest shift in the entire book begins. Because lasting change doesn't start with what you want to achieve. It starts with who you believe you are. Every habit you repeat shapes more than your schedule. It shapes your identity. Think about the way people describe themselves. I'm terrible with money. I'm not a morning person. I've never been disciplined. I'm just not someone who exercises. Most of us treat these statements like facts. But they're not facts. They're stories. Stories we've repeated so many times that they've become part of who we believe we are. And once you believe something about yourself, your brain starts looking for evidence to prove it right. Imagine someone who has always believed they're bad at public speaking. Every time they're asked to present, they become anxious. They stumble over a few words. They leave convinced they embarrassed themselves. What do they remember afterward? Not the parts they did well, only the mistakes. Their identity filters reality. Every experience becomes another piece of evidence supporting the story they've already accepted. The same thing happens with our habits. If you believe you're lazy, every missed workout confirms it. If you believe you're bad with money, every impulse purchase becomes proof. If you believe you'll never finish anything, every abandoned project strengthens that belief. Without realizing it, your habits become evidence for the person you think you are. And that's why lasting change isn't about changing what you do. It's about changing what your actions say about who you are. Most people approach change from the outside in. They begin with goals. I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to wake up earlier. I want to build a successful business. Then they try to build habits that will help them reach those goals. They hope that once they succeed, they'll finally become the person they've always wanted to be. James Clear argues that lasting change works in the opposite direction. It starts from the inside out. Instead of asking, what do I want to achieve? Ask, who do I want to become? Because every habit isn't simply producing an outcome, it's reinforcing an identity. Reading doesn't just help you finish books, it helps you become a reader. Running doesn't just improve your fitness, it helps you become a runner. Writing doesn't just produce pages, it helps you become a writer. The habit is important, but the identity it creates is even more powerful. Imagine 2 people trying to quit smoking. Someone offers each of them a cigarette. The first person says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." The second person smiles and replies, "No thanks, I don't smoke." The difference sounds small, but psychologically it's enormous. The first person still identifies as a smoker. They're resisting temptation. The second person has adopted a new identity. For them, saying no isn't a sacrifice. It's simply acting in alignment with who they believe they are. That's the real goal of every habit, not to force better behavior, but to create a new identity. This is why motivation eventually fades. Motivation depends on emotion. Identity depends on belief. And beliefs last much longer than feelings. Some mornings you'll wake up feeling inspired. Other mornings you won't. If your habits rely on motivation, they'll disappear the moment motivation does. But if your habits become part of your identity, they no longer require constant decision-making. A healthy person exercises because that's what healthy people do. A reader reads because that's what readers do. A disciplined person keeps promises to themselves because that's who they are. Eventually, the habit stops feeling like effort. It simply feels normal. Of course. There's one problem. How do you actually change your identity? You can't simply wake up tomorrow and decide to become a completely different person. Identity isn't built by declarations. It's built by evidence. Imagine walking into a courtroom. Your identity is on trial. Every action you take is another piece of evidence presented before the judge. One workout won't prove you're an athlete. One healthy meal won't prove you're healthy. One chapter won't prove you're a reader. But keep repeating those actions. And eventually the evidence becomes overwhelming. James Clear puts it beautifully. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. Not every vote determines the outcome, but together, they decide the election. This changes the way you think about small actions. Reading one page no longer feels insignificant. It's another vote. Saving $10 isn't about the money. It's another vote. Making your bed isn't about neatness. It's another vote. Showing up to the gym for 15 minutes instead of skipping entirely. Another vote. Tiny actions stop being about immediate results. They become evidence of who you're becoming. There's another reason this matters. Every habit creates a feedback loop. Your identity influences your behavior. Your behavior reinforces your identity. That stronger identity makes the behavior easier to repeat. The cycle continues. Imagine someone who starts running 3 mornings each week. After several months, friends begin describing them differently. You've become a runner. Eventually, they begin saying it themselves. Now missing a run feels strange. Not because they fear losing fitness, because it no longer matches who they believe they are. The identity now protects the habit. This is why people who experience lasting transformation rarely describe it as forcing themselves forever. Instead, they say things like, I just don't enjoy junk food anymore. I actually like waking up early. I can't imagine not exercising. The habit didn't become easier because life changed. It became easier because they changed. Their identity changed first. Their behavior simply followed. So before worrying about complicated routines, ask yourself one question. Who is the type of person capable of achieving the life I want? Maybe they're someone who values learning, someone who finishes what they start, someone who keeps promises to themselves, someone who chooses long-term growth over short-term comfort. Then ask an even more important question. What's one small action that person would take today? Not tomorrow, not next Monday, today. Because identity isn't created in one life-changing moment. It's built one decision at a time, and once your identity begins to change, everything else becomes easier. Because you no longer act to become that person. You act because you already believe you are. But believing you're capable is only half the battle. The real challenge is making those habits so simple, so obvious, and so rewarding that you can repeat them every single day. And that's exactly where James Clear's 4 laws of behavior change come in. Most people believe building better habits requires more discipline, more willpower, more motivation. But if you've made it this far, you've probably realized something. Discipline isn't the real problem. The real problem is that we've been making good habits too difficult. and bad habits far too easy. Imagine walking into your kitchen after a long day. A bowl of fresh fruit sits tucked away inside the refrigerator. On the counter, a box of cookies is sitting in plain sight. You weren't planning to eat the cookies, but 5 minutes later, they're gone. Was it because you suddenly lost all your discipline? Probably not. It happened because your environment made one decision easier than the other. James Clear says something incredibly simple, but incredibly powerful. We don't rise to the level of our motivation. We fall to the level of our environment. The people who consistently build good habits aren't constantly resisting temptation. They've simply designed their lives so temptation appears less often. That's where the 4 laws of behavior change come in. They're not tricks. They're a blueprint for making good habits automatic and making bad habits much harder to repeat. Law 1. Make it obvious. Every habit begins with a cue, something that tells your brain, it's time. An alarm clock reminds you to wake up. The smell of coffee reminds you it's morning. A notification reminds you to check your phone. Most habits aren't conscious decisions anymore. They're automatic responses to familiar cues. So if you want to build a better habit, start by making the cue impossible to ignore. If you want to read more, leave a book on your pillow before leaving the house. If you want to drink more water, keep a bottle on your desk where you can always see it. If you want to work out in the morning, lay your gym clothes beside your bed the night before. The easier it is to notice the cue, the easier it becomes to begin. And if you want to break a bad habit, do the opposite. Remove the cue. Delete distracting apps from your home screen. Keep unhealthy snacks out of the house. Charge your phone in another room at night. Out of sight often becomes out of mind. Law 2. Make it attractive. Our brains naturally move toward what feels rewarding. That's why scrolling social media feels effortless. Every swipe carries the possibility of something interesting. A funny video, a message, a surprise. Your brain learns to crave the anticipation. Good habits often struggle because their rewards are delayed. Exercise hurts before it helps. Saving money feels restrictive before it feels freeing. Studying feels difficult before it becomes useful. James Clear suggests pairing difficult habits with things you already enjoy. This is called temptation bundling. Maybe you only listen to your favourite podcast while walking. Maybe you only watch your favourite show while folding laundry. Maybe your favourite coffee is something you buy after finishing a productive morning. Your brain slowly begins connecting the habit with pleasure. Eventually, the habit itself becomes something you look forward to. Law 3. Make it easy. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that harder means better. So they create impossible routines. Wake up at 5, meditate, read 30 pages, exercise for an hour, journal, learn a language, cold shower. By the 3rd day, they're exhausted. Not because habits don't work, because the system demanded perfection. James Clear offers a much simpler approach. Reduce the habit until it becomes almost impossible to fail. Want to start reading? Read 1 page. Want to exercise? Do 1 push-up. Want to write? Write 1 sentence. At first, this feels almost too easy. That's exactly the point. The goal isn't impressive effort. The goal is repetition. Showing up every day matters more than doing everything perfectly once. Because habits aren't built through intensity, they're built through consistency. Every repetition strengthens the neural pathway. Eventually, the action becomes automatic. Law 4. Make it satisfying. Human beings repeat what feels rewarding. That's why checking your phone becomes addictive. Every notification gives your brain a tiny reward. Good habits need rewards too, not because the reward creates discipline, but because it tells your brain, this behavior is worth repeating. One of the easiest ways to do this is by making progress visible. Cross another day off your calendar. Check another box on your habit tracker. Watch your savings account slowly grow. Each small sign of progress creates satisfaction, and satisfaction creates consistency. James Clear shares the story of a couple who wanted to stop eating out. Every time they cooked dinner at home, they transferred the money they saved into a travel fund. Instead of focusing on what they were giving up, They focused on what they were gaining. The reward became immediate. The habit became easier to repeat. Of course. No one is perfect. You'll miss workouts. You'll oversleep. You'll eat unhealthy food. You'll forget. That's part of being human. The danger isn't making one mistake. The danger is letting one mistake become a new pattern. James Clear offers one of the simplest rules in the entire book: never miss twice. Miss one workout, show up tomorrow, skip one day of reading, read the next day, eat one unhealthy meal, make the next one better. A single mistake doesn't define your identity. Repeated mistakes do. Success isn't about being perfect. It's about returning to the path before the detour becomes a new destination. When you step back, you realize something. Atomic Habits was never really about habits. It was about becoming the kind of person your future depends on. Every small decision, every workout, every page, every dollar saved, every promise kept, is another vote for the person you're becoming. Most people spend their lives waiting for a dramatic breakthrough. One big opportunity, one perfect moment, one life-changing decision. But real transformation rarely arrives like that. It arrives quietly, hidden inside the choices nobody applauds, the walk you almost skipped, the page you almost didn't read, the alarm you almost snoozed, the healthy meal you almost replaced with fast food. Those moments seem ordinary, until you realize they're shaping the person you'll be years from now. The life you want isn't built in a single day. It's built one small choice at a time, because success isn't the result of one extraordinary action. It's the result of ordinary actions repeated long enough to become extraordinary. So the next time you feel like your progress is too small to matter, remember this. The tallest trees begin as tiny seeds. The strongest buildings begin with a single brick, and every remarkable life begins with one small habit, repeated again tomorrow. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more life-changing ideas from the world's best books, don't forget to subscribe and join us for the next summary. Until then, remember, your future isn't created by what you do once. It's created by what you choose to do every single day.